But weren't you ever worried about your image? Because, bro, I think about branding and positioning so obsessively that so I consider myself to be an ardent student of Steve Jobs. Okay, I study Steve Jobs obsessively. And once upon a time, Steve Jobs was famously asked that, you know what, Microsoft has a 95%, 96% market share, and Apple is not even 5%. Like, why aren't you scaling up? And why aren't you trying to match the level of Microsoft in terms of distribution, in terms of accessibility, in terms of interoperability? Bro, Steve Jobs said one sentence. He said that the problem with Apple is that we can't ship junk. I was like, dude, this is what I want to do. So every piece of content that I put out, I overthink, I obsess over it so much that I'm like, if tomorrow if I look back at this piece of content and I feel like I've compromised even a little bit, I will feel like I've done injustice to what I've built. So I'm so obsessed with that I do not try too much. And every time I try, it's very strategic in terms of experimenting. Those are all calculative risks, and they're not. There has never been a video which I just put out and say, "देखते हैं क्या होता है." But then when I see your approach, it's completely the opposite. You say, let's put out 10, 15 pieces of content, 5 or 6 of them will fly. And on the basis of what flies, then let's put out 5 to 10 pieces of content more on the basis of our experiment, which will then help us put more contents, which will give us more viewership, at the same time deliver more value.
And at the core of all this is fun. Like, I need to enjoy these topics. So, and also about the branding thing, I feel like branding, especially in our country, is an outcome of numbers to a large degree. Something I learned from the gaming world, something I learned from Gary Minardi, all these guys. Numbers are deeply respected in our country. I do believe that because we're urban guys and urban women watching this, we have a Western way of looking at things, which also has its place. I think if you want to sell to an urban audience only, this is the way to go. You have to think too much about branding. If I launch a D2C brand that's very targeted towards urban audiences, I will open up all of Steve Jobs' books and download it. But in my eyes, I'm not running Z English or Z News. I'm running Z TV. So I know that my main game is masses.
But doesn't that make you feel like you're losing your identity? Because initially you were the fitness guy, and then you became the fashion guy, and then you became the spirituality guy, and now you're deviating even further to be a podcaster. So don't you feel insecure about the dilution of your identity?
Like that people take it less seriously.
Yes.
I think the kind of distribution that we've built and that we're going to build further will make everyone take one seriously.
How is that, bro?
I see that in how people treat me at events. We don't leave. See, I'm shooting every day. So I travel once in 2 months. I go for very, very selected events. I see the way people come up to me, and people's energy always speaks before their words. So very rarely do I meet people who kind of go oh, that guy, he's like the, he's the bhoot guy, whatever. And obviously there are people like that from a distance. But I'm reaching out to the world's top cricketers, the world's top film stars, the world's top business professionals, at least in India. I know I'm doing something right, but much more importantly than what people think, I'm having a lot of fun doing this. So, and I'm paying the bills. I have a 60-member organization just helping me with this. So again, I'm not one of those people to go into self. I was going to use a much more crass angle, but I don't want to gloat. But if you're putting the food on the table for so many people, we have 400 people working across the organizations, and on some level, BeerBiceps is the opening batsman. So I live a very fulfilled life. Everything's going upwards: money, fame, numbers, clout. But all that aside, I'm really enjoying my life, and I don't want to trade away the enjoyment with the need for great branding. I think the rules of PR are changing very drastically. Very drastically. The internet has a very short memory, and being a chameleon has its own advantages. I know I'm not in this game for a limited amount of time. There could be a possibility that I could be there for 50 years. There could be a possibility that I could go by the time I'm 40 years of age. So you shouldn't be taking I look at it that way. Branding and PR as seriously as a lot of PR and branding professionals tell you, because they come from an old world which was a lot less moldable. I think social media has made media in general much more moldable. You don't need to be afraid about bad PR phases because it will be backed up by a good PR phase as long as you're working hard and working towards it. And I also feel that, again, the internet has a very short memory, man. So if your numbers are going up, numbers are distribution is power. You will have the ability to change a bad PR phase without taking too much tension about it. But again, what I truly insist on is being self-satisfied and having fun with the process. If you're not enjoying it, it's not worth it. And I have a little bit of a philosophical angle on this, which is that every human has two deaths. One is where the physical body dies. The second is where your name is taken for the last time on this planet. So there will be a day like that. Eventually, maybe it'll be 1,000 years later, but it will happen. So you can't take life and career that seriously if you're living life and if you're living your career out as an artist. Like, you have to let your art express itself also. So while the Tantric Yeti stuff, it creates its own stir, what it also does is it creates a lot of numbers. It makes me feel very enjoyable about the process, and it definitely unlocks some kind of dimensions in terms of thought and creativity. For example, I've deep dived so much into Tantra and Shastra and all these because of those episodes that seem like they're about ghosts and tantrics at the top, that it affects my nature of how I look back at my parental relationship. As in, my relationship with my parent, it's benefited my romantic relationship. It's benefited all my friendships. It's benefited my sense of empathy. And then all that kind of compounds and makes its way into your professional skill set as well. So there's like, knowledge never goes to waste. And just because these subjects on the surface seem trivial or childlike doesn't mean that they don't contain very, very deep philosophy and knowledge within it. For example, like, let's just take a Yeti and open up that subject. A Yeti is supposedly a mythical creature. It led me to many more conversations about the Himalayas. It led me to conversations with army personnel where they've told me things that they're not allowed to say on camera, classified information, etc. And I know so much like background stuff about our country because of those conversations that I know what I bring to a room. Secondly, like, even when it comes to the Yeti, it led me into this deep dive into the megafauna that the earth has lost. So all the animals that we see around us right now are 1% of the total animals that have ever existed. And you could easily count the Yeti as one of those animals that we've just not discovered because maybe there's very few left. This whole thing about crocodiles living till 150 years. What if the Yeti is also a creature like that lives like for 150, 200 years? So it unlocks certain elements of curiosity. Now, I link the Yeti to the crocodile. I can go and do a crazy wildlife podcast because I have that kind of a knowledge set. So if I'm doing the Tantra and Yeti stuff, it's also giving me some kind of weapons that I can use in a podcast with a celebrity, in a podcast with a politician, in a podcast with an actor.
So it's basically your inner child who is extremely curious, trying to quench his thirst of curiosity through these pieces of information. That's the first part. And the second part is what goes out there, how the public reacts to it, and stuff like that. But at the heart of it, you're doing what you absolutely love. You're enjoying the process. It's making you money. It's putting food on the plates of so many people. It's serving so many families. So you're like, this is what I want to do.
I'm like, I'm having fun. and very importantly, I'm making money. I think there's no point of money without fun and no point of fun without money. So it goes hand in hand, man.
Hi guys, thank you so much for watching the Indian Business Podcast. If you find value in our work, please hit that subscribe button, because for you it might be a zero effort task, but for us, that subscriber count is an important instrument to get great guests to our podcast and to make this podcast better for you. So if you find value, please subscribe.